Aaron was a quiet man who worked as a technician on a colony ship. His life was not filled with glory or adventure. He spent most days repairing machines, checking systems, and making sure everything ran without failure. He never thought he would stand before kings or queens, let alone aliens who ruled vast empires. Yet fate had a strange way of placing him in places he never imagined. The ship Aaron served on had been invited to the homeworld of the Sci-Fi, a race both feared and respected in the galaxy. The Sci-Fi were tall, graceful beings with silver skin and eyes that glowed faintly in the dark. Their empire stretched across dozens of star systems, and their queen was said to be as strong as she was beautiful. Many races trembled at the thought of angering her, for she commanded both armies and minds with ease. When Aaron first set foot on the shining palace grounds, he felt small. Towers of crystal and metal reached the skies. Bridges hung in the air without support, glowing as if alive. The palace itself pulsed with light as though it were a living creature. Aaron knew he was just a visitor, a worker, someone without power. He stayed behind the leaders of his mission, listening quietly while others spoke. But then the unexpected happened. A message came directly from the Queen. She did not call for the human commander or the diplomats. She asked for Aaron by name. The officials were confused, but the Queen's command was law. Soon Aaron found himself walking alone through tall doors carved with strange symbols, his heart beating faster with each step. Inside, the air was warm and filled with a soft hum. The throne hall stretched endlessly, lined with statues of past rulers. At the far end sat the Queen herself. She was unlike any being Aaron had seen. Her silver skin glowed under the light, and her crown seemed to be woven from strands of starlight. Beside her lay a cradle made of crystal, and from it came a sound that echoed through the hall. The cries of a child. The infant wailed with such force that the very walls seemed to shake. Strange devices hovered around the cradle, shining lights of every color, but nothing calmed the baby. The Sci-Fi attendants moved nervously, trying one method after another. Still, the child's cries only grew louder. The Queen lifted her hand and the room fell silent except for the sound of the baby. Her voice was steady, yet there was a weight of exhaustion in it. "Human Aaron," she said, her glowing eyes fixed on him. "You are not a leader, nor a warrior, nor a healer of my kind. Yet I have seen the way you watch the world with quiet patience. None of my healers, none of my machines, none of my people have been able to soothe my child. So I turn to you. If you can bring peace to my baby, I will give you any reward you ask." Aaron froze. He had come expecting to repair a broken system, not to face such a request. The idea of being asked to calm the air of a galactic queen was beyond him. But what shocked him most was what the Queen added next. "If you succeed, I will give you my hand in marriage. This is my promise." The hall went still. The Sci-Fi attendants widened their eyes in disbelief. The thought of their queen offering herself to a human technician was unthinkable. Aaron's face grew pale. He had no words. He wanted to speak, to refuse, to say it was impossible, yet his throat locked. He was speechless. The Queen waited, watching him with an expression that held both command and hope. Aaron slowly walked closer to the cradle. The child's small face was scrunched tight with tears. Its tiny hands grasped the air as though reaching for something it could not find. Aaron looked at the hovering machines, flashing colors and playing tones. He thought of how different they were from the simple ways humans cared for children. He remembered the days when he lived on Earth, before joining the colony ship. His sister had a baby, and sometimes she asked Aaron to hold the child when she was tired. The child never cared for glowing toys or loud sounds. What mattered was warmth, touch, and a gentle voice. Aaron took a slow breath and asked softly, "May I pick up the child?" The Queen gave a nod. The attendants hesitated but stepped back. Aaron reached down and carefully lifted the small Sci-Fi infant. Its skin shimmered faintly, soft and cool. The child struggled, but Aaron held firm, not with force but with care. He gently rocked the baby side to side, his hands steady. Then he did something none of the Sci-Fi expected. He hummed. It was a simple tune, one his mother used to hum when he was young. The sound was low, steady, and warm. The cries softened. The small hands slowed their frantic grasping, and soon the baby looked up at Aaron with wide, glowing eyes. The wail faded into small hiccups and then into silence. The great hall, once filled with restless noise, now stood completely quiet. Every Sci-Fi present stared in disbelief. Their glowing machines had failed. Their healing powers had failed. Yet a human's hum had done what nothing else could. The queen rose from her throne, her eyes locked on Arun. For the first time, the stern mask on her face shifted into something softer, awe mixed with relief as she stepped closer. "You have done what none of my people could," she said in a low voice. "You soothed the future of my line. You have touched the heart of my child with nothing but your own voice and care." "I gave my word, and my word is law," Aaron wanted to protest. He wanted to explain that he had done nothing special, that any human with simple kindness could do the same. Yet he remained quiet, still holding the now calm baby. The attendants began to whisper among themselves. Some were shocked, some were unsettled, but none could deny what they had seen. Aaron stood in the center of the throne hall, a human technician who had never sought greatness, holding an alien infant in his arms. The queen of one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy looked at him not as a mere guest, but as someone who had proven himself in a way none had imagined. And though he was speechless, Aaron knew this was only the beginning of a path he had never chosen, but could not escape. This was the first step in a story where a human's simple care would shake the pride of an empire. Aaron stood in the grand throne hall with the infant resting quietly in his arms. The glow of the cradle still shone behind him, but the once endless cries had faded into silence. The Sarai attendants whispered in hushed tones, some in disbelief, others in awe. The queen herself kept her eyes fixed on Arun. For the first time there was no stern command in her gaze. There was only relief. When Aaron carefully placed the child back into the crystal cradle, the queen raised her hand and spoke. "You have done what none of my court could. You brought peace to the heir of the Sarai with nothing but your own care. This will not be forgotten." Aaron bowed his head slightly, unsure how to answer. His hand still tingled from holding the small child. It seemed impossible that such a simple act had stirred such reaction among beings who commanded entire fleets. The queen dismissed the court, leaving only a few trusted attendants. When the tall doors closed, she approached Arun herself. "You must tell me," she said, her voice softer now. "How did you do this? My healers used every method known to us. They are trained in calming the mind and balancing the body. They failed. You, with no training, no power, succeeded. Explain." Aaron hesitated. He was not used to explaining human ways to others. But he spoke honestly. "On Earth," he said, "we soothe children with touch, with simple songs, with warmth. Machines cannot replace that. A baby feels comfort when it hears a gentle sound, when it feels safe in someone's arms." The queen tilted her head as though considering a thought she had never faced before. The Sarai valued logic, power, and knowledge, but here was a human who claimed the answer was something as small as a hum. "Strange," she murmured. "We searched for answers in the stars, yet yours comes from the heart." From that day, Arun was invited daily to the palace chambers where the infant rested. The queen ordered it herself. Each time the child grew restless, Aaron would hold it, hum softly, and the cries would quiet. The attendants took notes, studying his every move. But when they tried to copy his methods, the child turned away. It was not the act alone, Aaron realized, but the feeling behind it. Children understood warmth more than logic. Days passed, and the queen often stood near, watching carefully. She rarely spoke while Aaron tended to the baby, yet her presence carried weight. One evening, when the hall was lit with soft silver light, she asked again, "Is this what all humans do?" Aaron nodded. "Most of us. It is natural for us to comfort the young in this way. We do not rely only on tools. We rely on care." The queen's eyes softened, though her voice remained steady. "Then humanity holds something my empire has forgotten. Perhaps in our search for power, we left behind the simplest truths." Her words surprised Aaron. He never thought a ruler of her stature would admit such a thing. As the days turned into weeks, the child grew more attached to Aaron. Whenever he entered the room, the small one reached out, glowing eyes following him with joy. The attendants began whispering that the infant had chosen him as a figure of trust. Some even called him the child's calm. The queen began to ask Aaron about Earth. She wanted to know not of its weapons or ships, but of its people. Aaron told her of simple meals shared by families, of songs sung under open skies, of festivals filled with laughter. The queen listened with quiet focus, as though these stories carried more weight than reports of fleets or treaties. One day, when Aaron finished speaking of his mother's kindness, the queen looked down at the sleeping child and said, "My people fear weakness. They believe kindness makes us fragile. But when I see you with my child, I wonder if kindness is not weakness but strength of another kind. Aaron looked at her carefully. For the first time, he saw not just a queen but a mother, her crown of light, her robes of power. All of it seemed less heavy when she stood quietly over her child. She was not simply a ruler commanding armies. She was someone who carried the weight of love and duty together. It was then Aaron understood why she had made such a promise that day in the hall. It was not simply desperation. It was hope that someone, somewhere might remind her that her child could be raised with more than laws and machines. Still, Aaron did not know how to answer her vow. He respected her, admired her, but marriage to a queen of such power was beyond him. Whenever the thought arose, he shook his head in silence. But the Sarai court did not forget. Whispers spread through the palace and across the empire. The human who calmed the air. The queen's promise of marriage. Many doubted, some laughed, some grew jealous. Yet none could deny the truth of what they had seen with their own eyes. Aaron remained humble, never seeking glory. His only wish was to keep the child happy. He spent hours humming, telling simple earth tales and rocking the baby to sleep. For him, that was enough. But the queen knew this story was not small. It was the beginning of change. She saw how her people looked at Arun, not with scorn but with curiosity. Perhaps humanity had something to teach even the oldest of empires. Late one night, as the halls grew silent and stars shone over the crystal towers, the queen stood beside Aaron once more. Her voice was low, almost like a secret. You may think your acts are simple, human, but you are shaping the way my people see the world. My promise still stands. The path ahead will not be easy. There will be those who oppose, those who question, but I do not forget my word. Arun looked at her but said nothing. He was still speechless at the thought of her vow. Yet in his heart he understood one thing clearly. His life was no longer just about machines and repairs. He had become part of something larger, something that would test him in ways he could not yet see. And as the infant slept soundly in the crystal cradle, the future of the Sarai Empire seemed to rest not only in royal blood but also in the quiet care of a human who had shown them the forgotten strength of kindness. Arun's life within the palace slowly began to change. What started as a single request turned into a daily duty. The queen herself commanded that Arun should remain close to her child. Whenever the infant stirred, cried, or grew restless, it was Arun who was called. The palace attendants who once looked down on him now stepped aside, giving him space. Some still whispered in disbelief, but they could not deny the truth. The air of the Sarai calmed only in the presence of the human. Each day followed a rhythm. Arun would arrive in the shining nursery chamber, lift the infant gently and hum an earth tune while walking across the wide balcony that looked out over the glittering towers of the Sarai capital. The child would rest its glowing eyes on him, tiny hands reaching for his face. Arun would smile and continue his song. At first, Arun thought of this as only a task, something temporary. But as the days stretched into weeks, he found himself forming a bond with the child. He began speaking to the baby softly, telling stories of Earth. He spoke of the rivers he had seen as a boy, of the fields where he once ran, of the nights filled with stars that seemed endless. The infant would listen quietly, as though his words carried a gentle magic. The queen often stood nearby. She watched silently, her eyes fixed on the sight of a human rocking her heir with such care. Sometimes, when Arun looked up, he would catch a glimpse of something unexpected in her gaze. It was not the look of a ruler judging a subject. It was the look of a mother finding hope. One evening, when the stars glowed bright and the palace lights dimmed, the queen spoke as Aaron placed the baby back into the cradle. "You speak to the child as though your words are treasures," she said. "What do you tell him?" Aaron answered simply, "Stories of my world. I want him to hear about simple joys, about kindness, about life outside duty and command." The queen remained quiet for a long moment. Then she whispered, "Perhaps that is what he needs. Perhaps it is what I need as well." Aaron felt a strange warmth at her words, though he dared not reply. He knew the queen was bound by duties heavier than any he could imagine. Yet her eyes told him that she listened not only for her child but for herself. As the bond between Arun and the infant grew, so did the whispers in the palace. Some called him a miracle, others called him a danger. A few noble voices warned that giving a human such closeness to the royal family would bring shame. The Sarai were proud, and to see their queen's child soothed not by advanced devices or royal attendants, but by a quiet technician unsettled many. One morning, Aaron entered the nursery to find two high-ranking nobles waiting beside the queen. Their faces were stern, their silver eyes sharp. The taller of the two spoke first. "Your Majesty, we must question this. To entrust the heir to a human of no rank is dangerous. It is against the order of tradition. The child should be raised by the Sarali, not by an outsider." Aaron lowered his head, unsure if he should speak, but the queen lifted her hand. "Tradition has failed me," she replied calmly. "Machines have failed me. My healers have failed me. This human has not. My child rests in peace because of him, and I will not turn away from that truth." The nobles exchanged uneasy glances, but they could not oppose her openly. They bowed and left in silence, though their eyes showed resentment. That night, Arun lay awake in the small chamber given to him within the palace. He thought of the noble's words. He had never wanted power. He had never wished to stand against traditions or change the course of a people. All he had wanted was to do what felt natural, to comfort a crying child. Yet now, without intending it, he had become the center of something larger. The next day, as he hummed to the infant, he felt the queen's presence again. She stepped closer than before, her crown glimmering in the soft light. "You must be careful," she said quietly. "Not all in my court will accept you. Some see your presence as a threat, but I will not allow them to harm you. My word protects you." Aaron looked at her, unsure how to respond. He nodded slowly. He felt gratitude but also unease. He wondered if he was placing her in danger by simply existing in her world. Still, he could not deny what was growing between them. Each day, as he rocked the child and told stories, he felt the queen's gaze linger longer. Each time she asked him of Earth, her questions carried more interest, more curiosity. And when she listened to his answers, it was not the queen who listened, but the woman behind the crown. One evening, the child had fallen asleep in Aaron's arms, and the room was quiet except for the soft hum of the cradle. The queen stepped forward and touched the edge of the cradle lightly, almost hesitantly. "My people are strong," she said softly. "We have conquered worlds. We have bent stars to our will. Yet my child finds peace not in power but in your care. Perhaps we have been blind. Perhaps strength is not only in might but in gentleness too." Aaron's heart beat faster. He wanted to say something, to tell her she was right, to share what he felt, but his words failed him. Instead, he simply smiled at the sleeping infant and whispered another tune. And so the days continued. The bond between Arun, the child, and the queen grew stronger, even as shadows gathered in the corners of the court. Jealous eyes watched, waiting for a chance to strike. But for now, in the quiet glow of the nursery, a fragile peace bloomed. Aaron did not know what awaited him in the days to come. He did not know the trials that would test his courage or the dangers that would rise against him. All he knew was that he had found something greater than machines and repairs. He had found a place in the heart of a queen and her child, and though he was still speechless, his actions spoke louder than words. One evening, the child had fallen asleep in Aaron's arms, and the chamber was filled with a rare quiet. The queen stood nearby, her expression softened by the sight. For a brief moment, she seemed less like the ruler of an empire, and more like a mother who longed for peace. But beyond those walls, the court was not silent. Whispers had grown louder. Nobles who had bowed politely now spoke with sharper tongues. They questioned why a human, a mere technician, was allowed so close to the royal line. Some accused the queen of forgetting her own people. Others believed Aaron sought hidden power. Their doubts were like sparks waiting for fuel. The storm came sooner than anyone expected. One night, alarms echoed through the palace. The great crystal towers shook with the sound of warning bells. Aaron woke in his small chamber, his heart racing. Guards rushed down the hall, shouting orders. He caught pieces of their words: attack traitors, protect the queen. Without hesitation, Aaron ran toward the nursery. He did not think of safety. He thought only of the child. When he reached the chamber, he found the queen already there, her silver eyes burning with resolve. She stood with a small group of guards, her child resting in the crystal cradle. The doors shook under heavy blows from outside. "They mean to take him," the queen said, her voice steady but filled with urgency. "They want the heir, to bend him to their will." Aaron stepped forward. "Then we must move him now." The queen nodded. She lifted the child, but the baby stirred, sensing the fear in the air. Before the infant could cry, Arun reached out. The queen hesitated, then placed the child in his arms. The baby calmed instantly at his touch. The doors cracked open and rebels forced their way inside. They wore armor marked with the sigil of a rival house. Their leader raised his weapon and shouted, "The queen has grown weak. Hand over the heir or we will take him." The queen drew herself tall, her crown shining like fire. "You will not touch my child." The guards clashed with the intruders. The hall filled with the sound of steel and the glow of energy blades. Arun knew he could not fight like the Saralai warriors. His strength was not in weapons. But he could protect the child in other ways. Holding the baby close, Aaron ducked behind a column as sparks lit the air. The infant whimpered, but Aaron began to hum softly, his voice steady even as battle raged around him. The sound cut through the noise like a thread of calm. The baby's cries faded, replaced by quiet trust. The queen fought fiercely, her movement sharp and powerful. Yet even she was pressed hard by the rebels' numbers. Arun knew she could not both protect her throne and guard her child. Thinking quickly, Arun spotted a side passage, a narrow hallway leading out of the chamber. He called out to a guard, "This way! I'll take him to safety." The guard hesitated but saw the truth. Arun alone could keep the child calm, and without calm the infant's cries might reveal their location. The guard nodded and cleared the path. Aaron ran down the corridor. The baby held tightly in his arms. He hummed louder now, drowning out the distant clash of weapons. Each step felt heavier, yet he did not stop. He reached a hidden chamber deep within the palace, a place of quiet filled with the hum of protective energy fields. There he sat, rocking the child as the battle above raged. He thought of Earth, of his sister's home, of nights when he held his nephew close during storms. He whispered those memories as if they were spells of protection. Time passed slowly. At last the sounds of battle faded. The door to the chamber opened and the queen entered, her armor marked by the struggle but her eyes unbroken. She saw Aaron safe, the child asleep in his arms, and relief washed over her face. "You kept him safe," she said quietly. "Even when enemies filled my halls, you thought first of him. That is loyalty no crown can command." Aaron shook his head. "I did what anyone would do." But the queen stepped closer, her voice firm. "No, not anyone. My own nobles turned against me tonight, yet you, a foreigner, stood true. You shielded what matters most." The surviving guards bowed, their respect for Aaron clear in their eyes. The whispers that once doubted him would now change. He was no longer only the human who soothed the air. He was the protector who placed his own safety aside for the child. That night, as the palace repaired itself from the clash, the queen summoned her council. She stood tall and declared before them all, "This human has proven himself in ways greater than rank or tradition. He soothed my child when none could. He guarded him when traitors struck. By word and by act, he has shown more loyalty than those who claim blood and power." The council sat in silence, unable to deny the truth. Aaron, though still humble, felt the weight of her words. He never sought such honor, yet here he stood, a man of no noble line, now tied to the fate of an empire. And as he looked down at the child who slept peacefully in his arms, he knew that this bond was no longer chance. It was destiny pulling him deeper into a world where his simple care had become the greatest shield of all. The palace seemed brighter with each passing day, though shadows still lingered in its corners. Aaron had become a part of life within those golden halls, yet he could feel the tension pressing closer. Nobles whispered behind silk curtains, guards exchanged doubtful glances, and even servants walked more carefully in his presence. But the queen remained firm, her word like an unshakable wall protecting him. The child had grown stronger. No longer restless at every hour, the infant laughed when Aaron sang and reached for him eagerly. Even the attendants, once doubtful, began to smile when they saw the baby's joy. Some whispered that perhaps the queen had been right to trust the human. Others thought it dangerous still, but they could not deny the results. One morning Aaron entered the nursery and found the queen waiting alone, the child in her arms. She looked weary, as though she had not slept, yet her eyes carried determination. "The council has pressed harder," she said softly. "They claim your presence is a threat to the order of our people. They want you gone." Aaron's heart tightened. He lowered his head. "If I bring danger to you, then perhaps I should leave." The queen stepped closer, her voice steady but warm. "No, I made a vow. I promised that if you could soothe my child, you would not be cast aside. You have done more than soothe him. You have given him peace. You have given me hope." I will not betray that promise. Her words struck Aaron deeply. He looked at her, unsure if he was allowed to feel the weight of what she said. Yet in her gaze he saw not only duty but sincerity. The days that followed tested them both. The council called for meetings. Nobles argued endlessly. Some claimed that to allow a human into the royal circle would weaken the empire. Others warned that envy and doubt could lead to unrest. Through it all, the queen stood strong. Finally, the council demanded a trial of proof. They decreed that the child must be shown before the gathered court, surrounded by the empire's greatest healers and caretakers. If the infant calmed in their presence, Aaron's role would be declared unnecessary and he would be dismissed. If not, the queen's decision would stand. The day of the trial arrived. The great hall shone with silver banners and crystal pillars. Hundreds gathered, nobles in gleaming robes, warriors with armor that caught the light, and attendants who whispered with nervous voices. At the center stood the queen, her child in her arms. Aaron stood beside her, his heart pounding like a drum. One by one, the healers and caretakers stepped forward. They tried every method known to the Sci-Fi. They used devices of sound and light. They sang ancient lullabies. They wrapped the child in cloths woven with calming threads. But nothing worked. The infant cried louder, his small hands trembling. The hall filled with unease. Whispers rose. Some nobles smirked, ready to claim victory. But then the queen turned to Arun and gave the slightest nod. With trembling hands, Arun stepped forward. He lifted the child gently, cradling him against his chest. He began to hum the same simple earth melody he had used on the very first night. The sound was plain without grandeur, yet the baby's cries faded. The child's glowing eyes opened wide, gazing up at Aaron's face. Then came a small laugh, soft and bright, that echoed across the silent hall. The nobles froze. The council members who had shouted against him fell into stunned silence. Even the warriors lowered their heads in respect. None could deny the truth. The human had succeeded where all others had failed. The queen's voice rose, clear and powerful. You see with your own eyes. The heir rests in peace only with him. I will not cast aside the one who brings harmony to my child, and I will keep my promise. She turned to Aaron, her gaze steady before the court. You have soothed not only my son but my heart as well. Before my people I honor my vow. I offer you my hand not as ruler to subject but as one who keeps her word. The hall filled with a storm of voices, some in shock, some in support. But the queen's command silenced them all. Aaron's breath caught. He had never dreamed of such a moment. He looked at the queen, then at the child resting in his arms. Slowly he nodded, his voice barely above a whisper. Then I accept. The queen's eyes softened. The baby laughed again as though in blessing. And in that vast hall of silver light, a new chapter began, not of tradition, not of duty alone, but of a bond born from the simplest act, the soothing of a child. For the Sci-Fi, it was a story that would echo through generations. For Aaron, it was the moment he learned that even the smallest kindness could reshape the fate of worlds.